Lena Brooks had been in Europe for 30 days when she walked into a small osteria in Bologna and met the man who would make her question everything she thought she wanted. She'd spent 20 days in France learning how to be happy alone. She had 10 more days before she'd realize that sometimes the best journeys aren't the ones you take by yourself. Tell me where you're watching from, because today you'll discover that finding yourself and finding love don't have to be mutually exclusive. The osteria didn't have a name on the door, just a small wooden sign with a painted grapevine and an address that Lena had scribbled on the back of a receipt from the woman at the market yesterday. "You like food?" the woman had asked in broken English, and Lena had nodded enthusiastically because that was possibly the understatement of her entire 3-week Italian experience. "Then you go here. Not for tourists, for people who understand." Lena had spent the last 31 days of her life understanding things. Understanding that her 10-year career in tech had been slowly suffocating her. Understanding that her engagement to Marcus had ended not with drama, but with the quiet, devastating realization that she didn't love him anymore and maybe never had. Understanding that she could sell everything she owned, quit her job, and buy a one-way ticket to Paris without imploding. Understanding, it turned out, was exhausting and liberating in equal measure. The osteria was tucked down a side street in Bologna that her guidebook would never mention. 12 tables, exposed brick walls covered in vintage photographs of the city, and the smell of slow-cooked ragu that made her stomach growl audibly, despite the fact that she'd eaten her body weight in tortellini approximately 3 hours ago. An older woman appeared from the back, wiping her hands on an apron. "Buonasera. Just you?" Lena had gotten used to that question. In Paris, Provence, Lyon, and now Bologna. "Just you?" always said with a slight tilt of concern, as if eating alone was something to be pitied rather than chosen. "Just me," Lena confirmed in her terrible Italian, then switched to English. "A table for one, please." The woman's face softened into a smile. "We have perfect table. Come." She was seated near a window that overlooked a narrow street, where laundry hung between buildings, and the late afternoon sun painted everything gold. The menu was handwritten in Italian with no translations, which Lena had learned meant the food would be exceptional. She ordered wine because she'd stopped counting glasses 3 countries ago, and pointed to something on the menu that she was 70% sure was the ragu she'd been smelling since she walked in. The wine arrived first. Deep red, probably local, definitely delicious. She was taking her second sip when she felt it. That awareness that someone was watching her. Not creepy watching. Interested watching. She looked up. A man had emerged from what she assumed was the kitchen, talking to an older man in chef's whites. He was laughing at something, head tilted back, completely unself-conscious. Late 30s, she guessed. Dark blonde hair that looked like he'd run his hands through it repeatedly and decided that was good enough. Tan skin that spoke of time outdoors, not salons. Wearing dark jeans and a white Henley that fit well enough to suggest he either cared about clothes or had won the genetic lottery for builds that made everything look good. Possibly both. He must have felt her staring because he turned, and Lena found herself looking into the greenest eyes she'd ever seen. Not Hazel trying to be green. Actually, genuinely green. The kind of green that made you forget what you were supposed to be doing. He smiled. Small, interested, with just enough confidence to be appealing without crossing into arrogance. Then he started walking toward her table. Lena's heart did something acrobatic that had no business happening for a complete stranger in a random Italian restaurant. "First time here?" he asked when he reached her table. His English was perfect. Accent Italian, but subtle, like he'd spent time in other places. "How did you know?" "Because I would have remembered you." He said it simply, as fact rather than line. "I'm Aurelio. I own this place." "Lena." She gestured to the empty chair across from her. "Is this the part where you personally ensure every customer is satisfied with their wine selection?" "Only the interesting ones," May I?" She nodded, not trusting her voice to stay level. He sat, folded his hands on the table, and looked at her with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable, but somehow wasn't. "So, Lena, what brings you to Bologna?" "Food, mostly. I've been eating my way through Italy for the past 11 days. Before that, I was eating my way through France for 20 days. I have a very sophisticated travel strategy." "The best strategy," he said seriously. "What brought you to my restaurant specifically?" "A woman at the market said I had to come here, that it wasn't for tourists. And yet here you are, a tourist." "Technically, yes, but I like to think I'm a discerning tourist, one who appreciates that not everything needs to be in a guidebook." "You're absolutely right. The best things never are." He paused. "Are you traveling alone?" There it was again, that question. But from him it sounded different. Curious, not pitying. "By choice," Lena said. "I needed to figure some things out." "And are you? Figuring them out?" "I think so. Or at least I was until about 5 minutes ago." His smile widened. "Did I complicate things?" "Possibly." "Good. Life is better complicated." The food arrived before she could respond. A bowl of ragu that looked like it had been cooking since the Renaissance and smelled like every good decision she'd ever made. She took a bite and couldn't stop the sound that escaped her throat. Embarrassing. Completely embarrassing. She was making food porn noises in front of the owner. "I'm so sorry," she said, face hot. "I've apparently lost all sense of propriety somewhere between Paris and here." "Never apologize for appreciating good food. My chef would consider that the highest compliment." "Please tell your chef I might actually cry." "I'll make sure he has tissues ready." She laughed, and something in her chest loosened. When was the last time someone had made her laugh like this? Easy and genuine, without having to perform or pretend. Aurelio settled into the chair like he had all the time in the world. "So tell me about your journey. France first? 20 days, Paris, then Provence, then Lyon. It was supposed to be about finding myself." Which sounds incredibly cliché, I know. Not cliché. Necessary. What were you finding yourself from? "A job I hated, and a relationship that had quietly died without either of us noticing until it was too late." She surprised herself with the honesty. "I worked in tech for 10 years. Good money, impressive title, absolute misery. Got engaged to someone who was perfectly nice, but completely wrong. One day I woke up and realized I couldn't do it anymore. Any of it. So I quit everything." "Everything?" "Job, relationship, apartment. Sold what I could, donated the rest. Bought a one-way ticket and gave myself permission to have no plan whatsoever. That takes courage. Or stupidity. The jury's still out." "I vote courage." He leaned back, studying her. "And what did you find? In France?" She thought about those 20 days in France. Really thought about them. Paris first. She'd arrived on a Wednesday afternoon, jet-lagged and terrified and exhilarated all at once. Checked into a small hotel in the Marais that she'd found on a travel blog. Unpacked her single suitcase. Everything she owned now fit in one suitcase, which was either depressing or liberating depending on how you looked at it, and then stood at the window overlooking a narrow street and thought, now what? The first morning, she'd walked to a cafe 3 blocks away. Ordered a café crème in terrible French and a croissant because you had to start with a croissant. When it arrived, flaky, buttery, perfect, she ate the whole thing, then ordered another one, and another. 3 croissants. She ate 3 croissants for breakfast, and for the first time in 5 years, she didn't count the calories. Didn't feel guilty. Didn't hear Marcus's voice in her head about how she should be careful, how she'd complained just last month about her jeans being tight. She just ate them and felt joy. That's when she knew something had fundamentally shifted. She'd spent a week in Paris doing aggressively touristy things. The Louvre, where she'd stood in front of the Winged Victory and cried for reasons she couldn't articulate. Notre Dame, still damaged from the fire but beautiful in its resilience. The Latin Quarter, where she'd drunk wine at outdoor cafes and watched people live their lives. At a hostel bar in the 11th arrondissement, she'd met Sophie, 32, Australian, traveling solo for 6 months. They'd bonded over cheap wine and stories about their respective disasters of past relationships. "What are you looking for out here?" Sophie had asked around 2 a.m., both of them pleasantly drunk. "I don't know. Maybe just peace? Permission to exist without apologizing for it?" "That's the best reason I've heard yet." They'd spent 3 days exploring together before Sophie left for Amsterdam. But those 3 days had taught Lena something important. She could make connections without losing herself, could have companionship without compromising her journey. Then Provence. She'd rented a car, her first time driving in Europe, navigating roundabouts and narrow roads with white-knuckle determination, and driven south to lavender country. The first time she saw the fields, she'd pulled over and just stared. Purple stretching to the horizon, the smell overwhelming and perfect. Bees working between rows. And silence. Such profound silence. She'd walked into the field, stood among the lavender, and felt her lungs expand properly for the first time in a decade. Felt space open in her chest where anxiety and obligation had lived for so long. At a market in a village whose name she couldn't pronounce, she'd met Marie, 60-something, French, silver hair in a long braid, carrying vegetables and a baguette. They'd been reaching for the same bunch of herbs when Marie had looked at her and said in perfect English, "You look like you need to talk." "I'm fine." "No, you're not. You're American, you're alone, and you have that look. The one that says you're figuring something out. Come, have lunch with me." Lena had followed this strange woman to a small house on the edge of town, where Marie had made them salad and cheese and crusty bread and poured wine like water. "I left my husband at 45, Marie had said without preamble. "Everyone thought I was insane. 22 years of marriage, 2 grown children, a comfortable life. But I was dying inside. What did you do?" "I left. Moved to this village. Started painting. Lived on very little money and very much freedom." She'd looked at Lena sharply. "You left something too. I can see it. Everything. I left everything. Good. Now you get to choose what you take back." They'd talked for hours, about regret and choice and the cost of safety, about how society told women to be grateful for comfortable lives even if those lives were slowly suffocating them, about the difference between being alone and being lonely. "You're ahead of schedule," Marie had said as Lena left. "I was 45 when I figured it out. You're what, 30? 30. Lucky girl, you have so much time to build something real." Lena had spent 4 more days in Provence, eating cheese and bread, drinking local wine, reading in gardens, and feeling genuinely, completely happy. Not happy with an asterisk, just happy. Then Lyon, the food city. If she was going to eat her way through France, Lyon was essential. She'd stayed in a small apartment near the Presqu'île, spent her days hunting down bouchons, those traditional Lyonnais restaurants that served comfort food elevated to art. At one, she'd met Tom, a British secondary school teacher in his 40s who was also traveling alone. "First time solo traveling?" he'd asked when they ended up sharing a table. First time doing anything solo in a very long time. They'd fallen into easy conversation, nothing romantic. He was recently divorced. She was recently everything Ed. Just 2 people enjoying each other's company without expectation. Over boudin noir and way too much Côte du Rhône, Tom had said, "You seem lighter than you did at the start of dinner." "Do I?" "Yeah. Like you're remembering how to take up space without apologizing for it." "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who's been through it." I spent 2 years of my marriage making myself smaller, quieter, less, trying to be what she needed. When it ended, I didn't know who I was anymore. He'd taken a sip of wine. This trip? It's about remembering, about finding that person again. And have you? Found him? Getting there. You? Lena had thought about it. About the croissants in Paris. About standing in the lavender fields. About lunch with Marie. About this exact moment, sitting in a Lion Bouchon with a stranger who understood. Yeah, she'd said. I think I am. Those 20 days had changed her. Fundamentally, completely changed her. She'd arrived in Paris scared and unsure. She'd left Lyon for Italy knowing exactly who she was and what she wanted. Freedom, peace, the ability to make her own choices without having to justify them to anyone. I found out I was happy, she said to Aurelio, all of that history behind the simple words. Genuinely happy. For the first time in I don't know how long. And now, in Bologna, now I'm eating the best ragu of my life and talking to a stranger who's either very good at customer service or genuinely interested in my existential crisis. Can't it be both? I suppose it could. They talked for 2 hours. About food and travel and the tiny decisions that end up changing your entire life. About his grandmother who'd owned the restaurant before him and how he'd inherited it young and learned to love something he'd never planned on doing. About her complete lack of cooking skills and his insistence that anyone could learn if they were willing to make a mess. About nothing and everything. At some point, the older woman who'd seated her appeared with espresso neither of them had ordered. She set the cups down with a knowing look that made Lena think this was not standard service. Thank you, Maria, Aurelio said. Maria patted his shoulder and disappeared back into the kitchen, leaving them alone again. Are you free tomorrow? Aurelio asked, stirring sugar into his espresso. I'm free for the next 3 months, give or take. That's kind of the point of this whole thing. Then let me show you Bologna. The real one. Not the tourist version. Is that a line you use often? Never. You're the first person I've wanted to show my city to in... He paused, calculating. Ever, actually. She should say no. She'd come to Europe to be alone, to figure out who she was without a job defining her or a relationship shaping her. She'd spent 20 days in France proving to herself that she could be happy in her own company. But she heard herself say, Okay, show me your Bologna. The next morning, Lena met Aurelio at the Mercato di Mezzo at 9 a.m., which felt both absurdly early and perfectly appropriate for someone whose entire travel philosophy revolved around food. He was waiting outside wearing jeans and a dark blue shirt with the sleeves rolled up, holding 2 paper cups of coffee, looking unfairly attractive for someone who'd probably been awake since dawn. Buongiorno, he said, handing her a cup. I hope you're hungry. I'm always hungry. It's become my defining characteristic. Then you're going to love this. The market was chaos in the best possible way. Vendors calling out in Italian, the smell of fresh bread and aged cheese and cured meats, locals shopping with the kind of purpose that came from knowing exactly what they wanted. Aurelio knew everyone. The cheese vendor, the woman selling vegetables, the man behind the prosciutto counter. They all greeted him warmly, asked questions in rapid Italian she couldn't follow, and looked at her with undisguised curiosity. Who is she? The cheese vendor asked in English, clearly for Lena's benefit. Lena. She's American. Teach her what real Parmigiano tastes like, not that garbage they sell in grocery stores. What followed was an education in cheese that Lena hadn't known she needed. Then prosciutto, then bread, then olives. Aurelio kept introducing her, kept translating, kept making sure she tried everything even though she protested that she wouldn't be able to eat lunch. That's fine, he said. We'll skip lunch and go straight to dinner. By noon, she was full and happy and slightly tipsy from the wine they'd sampled at 3 different vendors. They were standing outside the market trying to decide what to do next when Aurelio said, Have you ever been on a Vespa? No, And I'd like to keep my life insurance valid, so come on, I'll be careful. I promise. That's how Lena found herself 20 minutes later climbing onto the back of a Vespa, wrapping her arms around Aurelio's waist and holding on while he navigated through Bologna's narrow streets with the kind of confidence that suggested he'd been doing this since he was old enough to reach the pedals. She screamed the first time he took a corner, then laughed, then screamed again when he accelerated up a hill. By the time they reached the countryside outside the city, she was breathless and exhilarated, and possibly having more fun than she'd had in years. They stopped at a viewpoint overlooking rolling hills covered in vineyards and cypress trees, the kind of view that belonged on postcards and made you understand why people wrote poetry about Italy. "This is incredible," Lena said, pulling off the helmet he'd insisted she wear. "This is home." He said it simply, with the kind of pride that came from genuinely loving a place. They sat on a low stone wall, legs swinging, not quite touching, but close enough that she was aware of every breath he took. "Tell me something true," Aurelio said. "Something you haven't told anyone else on this trip." She thought about deflecting, making a joke, keeping things light, but there was something about him that made her want to be honest. "I'm terrified," she admitted, "that I made a huge mistake, that I'll run out of money and have to go back to a job I hate and a life that was slowly killing me. That this whole trip is just me running away instead of running toward something. And what do you think? Deep down?" I think I was dying. Slowly. And now I'm not. Even if I'm scared, I'm alive again. That has to count for something." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "It counts for everything." They stayed on that wall for an hour, talking about fear and courage and the difference between the two. About the lives we plan and the lives we actually live. About how sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit you were wrong and start over. When they finally got back on the Vespa, Lena wrapped her arms around him a little tighter, and if he noticed, he didn't say anything. Just started the engine and drove them back to the city as the sun started its descent toward the horizon. That evening, he took her to aperitivo in Piazza Maggiore. They claimed a small table outside a bar and watched people stream through the square while the light turned golden and the air filled with conversation and laughter. "This is my favorite time of day," Aurelio said. "When work is done and everyone's just living." "What do you do?" Lena asked. "When you're not running a restaurant and giving tours to random Americans?" "Family business. Import and export. Less interesting than food." "But it pays for the restaurant?" "Something like that." He changed the subject smoothly. "What will you do? After Europe?" "I have no idea, which is either liberating or terrifying depending on the day." "What if it's both? Then I'm in trouble." He smiled. "Or exactly where you need to be." The second day, Saturday, he picked her up at her hotel and announced they were taking a day trip. "Where?" she asked, climbing into his car, a sleek black Alfa Romeo that probably cost more than her annual salary used to be. "Modena. You like cars?" "I'm neutral on cars, but I like spending time with you, so I'll pretend to care about cars." He laughed. "Honest. I appreciate that." The drive took an hour. They talked the entire time, the conversation flowing as easily as it had the day before. He told her about growing up in Bologna, about his sisters who drove him crazy, and whom he'd do anything for. She told him about her family in New Jersey, about her parents who still didn't understand why she'd quit a perfectly good job. The Ferrari Museum in Modena was exactly what you'd expect, sleek, impressive, full of cars that cost more than houses. Aurelio lit up talking about engineering and design in a way that made even Lena's non-car enthusiast heart pay attention. "You really love this," she observed. "Speed and precision and beauty. What's not to love? Control?" He looked at her sharply. "Is that what you think it is? Isn't it? Maybe. Or maybe it's about knowing that if you do everything exactly right, you can fly." After the museum, they had lunch at a small trattoria, where they tasted 25-year-old balsamic vinegar that was thick and sweet, and nothing like what came out of bottles at home. "I'm simultaneously impressed and intimidated by vinegar," Lena said. "That's the appropriate response." On the drive back, the sun was setting, painting the Tuscan hills in shades of amber and rose. Aurelio pulled over at a viewpoint without warning. "Come on," he said. They stood at the edge of the overlook, the landscape stretching endlessly before them, and Lena felt something shift in her chest. This moment, this place, this person next to her. "This is my favorite view," Aurelio said quietly. She turned to look at him, found him already looking at her. "I wasn't talking about the landscape," he added. Her breath caught. They were standing close now. Close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his green eyes, could smell his cologne mixed with the fading warmth of the day. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His lips were a breath from hers when she turned her head at the last second. "Aurelio." He stopped immediately, stepped back. "Too fast?" "Maybe. I don't know." She wrapped her arms around herself. "I came here to be alone, to figure out who I am without someone else defining me. And you're making that complicated. I don't want to complicate your journey. But you are. And I don't know if that's good or bad or what I'm supposed to do about it." He was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, I understand. We can slow down. Just friends showing you Bologna." "Is that what we are? Friends?" "We're whatever you need us to be, Lena." The third day was Sunday. Lazy and comfortable in a way that surprised her. He invited her to his apartment to cook, claiming he was going to teach her to make fresh pasta because it was criminal that she'd been in Italy for 11 days and hadn't learned yet. His apartment was in a historic building near the university. High ceilings, original details, filled with books and art and furniture that looked both expensive and lived in. The kitchen was small but professional, with pots and pans hanging from a rack and a shelf full of spices and oils. "Okay," he said, pulling out flour and eggs. "First rule of pasta. You will make a mess. Accept it now." "I'm excellent at making messes. This should go well." It did not go well. The dough was either too dry or too wet. Her hands were covered in flour. She somehow got eggs in her hair. Aurelio was trying so hard not to laugh that his shoulders were shaking. "You're terrible at this," he finally said. "I warned you I couldn't cook." "You weren't exaggerating." But eventually, through some combination of his patience and her determination, they had pasta. Imperfect, lumpy in places, but undeniably pasta. They cooked it simply, just butter and sage, and ate on his balcony overlooking the terracotta roofs of Bologna as the church bells rang in the distance. "This is perfect," Lena said. "The pasta's a disaster. I meant this, being here, with you." He set down his fork. "Lena, I know I said I needed to be alone, and I do. I did. But maybe..." She searched for the right words. Maybe being alone was about learning I could be happy by myself, not that I had to be alone forever. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I don't want to go back to my hotel tonight. I'm saying I like you. I'm saying I'm terrified, but I want to see what this is." He stood, walked around the small table, pulled her to her feet. "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." He kissed her then, slow and deep and full of intention. She kissed him back, hands in his hair, body pressed against his, and felt something in her chest crack open. They barely made it to his bedroom. Monday morning arrived with sun streaming through unfamiliar windows, and the realization that Lena had made several decisions the night before that she was either going to regret or treasure for the rest of her life. Aurelio was already awake, propped on one elbow, watching her. "Good morning," he said softly. "Hi. She pulled the sheet up self-consciously. So, that happened. Regrets? I'll let you know after coffee. He laughed and got up to make it, completely unself-conscious in his nakedness. Lena watched him walk to the kitchen and felt her heart do something stupid and irresponsible. They had breakfast on the balcony, espresso and pastries he'd somehow procured without her noticing. The morning was comfortable, easy, the kind of intimacy that should have taken weeks to develop, but somehow felt natural after just a few days. I want to take you somewhere today, Aurelio said. A friend's vineyard. His grandfather owns it. It's about an hour outside the city. A vineyard. Very romantic. Are you trying to seduce me? I believe I already did that. This is the impress you with Italian countryside phase. Ah, phase 2. Got it. The drive took them through rolling hills covered in vines, past small medieval towns that looked like they'd been plucked from Renaissance paintings. His friend Dante met them at the vineyard, tall, warm, immediately welcoming. Aurelio! Dante embraced him. And you brought a woman. I thought this day would never come. Be cool, Dante. I'm always cool. Come. Nonno wants to meet her. Dante's grandfather was 85, sharp as a knife, and absolutely delighted to have visitors. He insisted on giving them the full tour of the vineyard himself, walking them through rows of vines while explaining in Italian that Dante translated. He says the vines are like children, Dante translated. You must pay attention, give them what they need, but also know when to leave them alone. Too much interference, and they become weak. They tasted wine in the aging cellar, dark and cool, and smelling of oak and thyme. The wine was spectacular, complex in ways that made Lena wish she knew more about wine so she could properly appreciate it. You like it? Nonno asked in halting English. It's wonderful, Lena said. The best wine I've had in Italy. He beamed, patted her hand. You come back. Bring him. He pointed at Aurelio. Make him happy. He works too much. I'll see what I can do. On the drive back, with the sun setting and the day settling into comfortable exhaustion, Lena felt something she hadn't expected. Peace. The kind of deep, settled peace she'd found in France during those solo days. But this was different. This was peace with someone else. Peace that didn't require her to give up parts of herself. But underneath it was fear. Because peace like this could disappear, could be taken away, could reveal itself to be temporary. She must have been quiet for too long, because Aurelio glanced over. You okay? Yeah, just thinking. About how perfect this day was, and how scared that makes me. Why does perfect scare you? Because nothing stays perfect, and I'm not sure I'm ready for it to end. He reached over, took her hand. So don't let it end. If only it were that simple. Tuesday started normally. Breakfast at his place. Plans to explore more of Bologna. But Lena noticed the phone calls he stepped into another room to take. The text messages he read with a slight frown, before tucking his phone away. Work? She asked. Family business. It can wait. But it clearly couldn't. By evening, there was tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there before. They had dinner at the osteria, his osteria, at a quiet table in the back. Maria brought them wine without asking, and Lena could sense that something was coming. I need to tell you something, Aurelio said finally, before this goes any further, before you invest more of yourself in this. Her stomach dropped. Here it was, the revelation, the complication, the reason this was all too good to be true. Okay. He took a breath. My family runs an organization in Bologna, has for 3 generations. We control territory, offer protection, handle financial operations that exist in gray areas. Some of what we do is legal. Much of it isn't. He paused. I'm a boss. That's the word people use. I don't deal in drugs. I don't traffic people. Those are lines I won't cross. But I'm still a criminal by law. Lena absorbed this, processed, found herself surprisingly calm. You're connected, she said. Statement, not question. Yes. She should feel shocked, horrified, should get up and leave. But instead, she felt clarity. This explained the expensive car, the way people looked at him with respect mixed with something else, the phone calls he couldn't ignore. Why are you telling me this? Because I can't let you leave without knowing the truth. Because you deserve honesty about who I am and what my life involves. Because He stopped. Because I care about you. More than I should after 5 days. And I won't build something real on lies. And I'm scared that if I stay, I'll lose the version of myself I just found, that I'll disappear into someone else again. Even if that someone is me, especially if it's you, because I think I could love you, and that terrifies me more than anything. Aurelio was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached across the table, took both her hands in his. Lena, listen to me. I don't want you to disappear. I don't want a smaller version of you or a version that fits into some idea I have. She thought about Marcus, who'd hidden his doubts about their relationship for a year, who'd made decisions about their future without consulting her, who'd treated her like a problem to be managed rather than a partner to be trusted. Is it dangerous? She asked. What you do? Sometimes. I'm careful. I have security. I follow rules that keep me relatively safe. But yes, sometimes it's dangerous. Are you dangerous? To you? Never. To people who threaten what's mine? Yes. She believed him. Could see the truth of it in his eyes. I need to think, she said finally. I understand. No, I mean... She struggled to find words. I spent 10 years with someone who made me smaller, who decided what I should want, who I should be. I left everything to find myself, and I did. In France, alone, I figured out who I was and what made me happy. I was free. And now I'm terrified. Because this feels huge. I want you exactly as you are, fierce and independent and figuring your life out. I don't want to cage you or control you or make you into something you're not. I just want to be part of your journey. If you'll let me. Tears pricked her eyes. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I'm ready. Then don't be ready. Go to Greece like you planned. Take the time you need. Figure out what you want without me sitting across from you making you feel things you're not sure about yet. And then you decide. If you want to keep traveling alone, keep finding yourself without anyone else in the picture, I'll understand. I won't like it, but I'll understand. He squeezed her hands. But if you decide you want to try this, whatever this is, I'll be here, whenever you're ready. What if I'm never ready? Then I'll have had 5 of the best days of my life and a memory of someone extraordinary. That's more than most people get. She cried then. Properly cried. He moved his chair next to hers, pulled her against his chest, and let her soak his shirt, while Maria pretended not to notice from across the restaurant. When she finally pulled back, eyes swollen and makeup definitely ruined, she said, I'm leaving tomorrow, for Santorini. I know. I need time, to think, to figure out if I can do this without losing myself. Take all the time you need. Will you... She stopped. Will you wait? Yes. That's not fair to you. Let me worry about what's fair to me. You worry about what's fair to you. They didn't sleep together that night. He walked her back to her hotel, kissed her forehead, and let her go. The next morning, Lena packed her bags alone. Aurelio didn't come to the hotel, didn't text, gave her the space she'd asked for even though every part of her wanted to see him one more time. Her phone buzzed as the taxi pulled up. A text from him. "Safe travels. You know where to find me." She cried in the taxi. Cried on the plane. Cried on the ferry from Athens to Santorini. She'd come to Europe to find herself. And she had. But somewhere along the way, she'd found something else too. Something she wasn't sure she was brave enough to keep. Santorini was exactly as beautiful as the photos promised. White buildings cascading down cliffs toward an impossible blue sea. Blue-domed churches that looked like they'd been painted by someone who believed in heaven. Views that made you understand why ancient people thought gods lived in Greece. Lena checked into a small hotel in Fira, away from the tourist crush of Oya. Her room had a balcony overlooking the caldera, white walls, blue shutters, and a simplicity that should have felt peaceful. It didn't. She unpacked slowly, hung the few dresses she'd brought, arranged her toiletries in the tiny bathroom, stood on the balcony watching the sunset paint everything gold and pink, and tried to feel the same peace she'd felt in Provence. The peace didn't come. Day one, she did what tourists do. Walked through narrow streets taking photos of doors and stairways and cats sleeping in afternoon sun. Found a small cafe, ordered Greek salad and too much wine. Watched people, couples mostly, holding hands, taking selfies, being in love in this romantic place. She felt profoundly alone. Which was stupid because she'd chosen this. Had chosen to leave Bologna, to leave Aurelio, to continue her journey solo. This was what she wanted. Freedom, independence, the ability to make her own choices. So why did it feel so empty? Day 2, she rented an ATV and drove to the Red Beach. The volcanic sand was hot under her feet. The water was perfect, and she swam alone while families played in the shallows and couples lounged on towels. She kept thinking about the vineyard outside Bologna, about Dante's nonno pouring wine and telling her to make Aurelio happy, about the way the afternoon light had caught in Aurelio's green eyes when he'd looked at her. She'd been happy there. Why had she left? Because you needed space to think, she reminded herself. Because 5 days isn't enough to make this kind of decision. Because you spent 10 years losing yourself in someone else, and you can't afford to do that again. But was she in danger of losing herself with Aurelio? Or was she using that fear as an excuse? That evening, she did a wine tasting at a vineyard built into the volcanic rock. The wines were unique, mineral, volcanic, unlike anything she'd tasted in Italy or France. The sommelier explained terroir and volcanic soil and how place shapes taste. All she could think about was Aurelio explaining Ferrari engineering with the same passion. About how love makes you interested in things you never cared about before. Day 3, she met Anna and James. They were at the next table at a restaurant in Oya, clearly on their honeymoon, that specific glow of people who'd recently promised each other forever and still believed in forever. When they noticed Lena eating alone, Anna had leaned over. "Are you here by yourself?" "Yes." "That's brave. Would you like to join us? We're drinking too much wine and could use someone to help us make good decisions." Lena had moved to their table, and they'd spent 3 hours together. Anna and James were from Manchester, had been together 8 years, married for exactly 11 days. They were funny and warm, and so obviously in love that it hurt to watch. "Are you traveling alone by choice or circumstance?" Anna asked eventually, the wine making everyone more honest. "Both? Neither? I'm still figuring that out." "Sounds complicated." "It really is." James excused himself to the bathroom, and Anna leaned closer. "Can I tell you something? About a year before James proposed, I almost left him." "Really?" "Really. I thought I needed to find myself, that I'd been with him since I was 22 and I didn't know who I was without him. So I took a job in Edinburgh for 3 months. Lived alone. Dated other people. The whole independence thing. And I learned I was perfectly capable of being alone. Of being happy alone. But I also learned that being capable of something doesn't mean you have to do it forever. She paused. I could be alone. But I didn't want to be. And that's okay too. After they left, Lena walked back to her hotel along the Caldera path. The sunset was spectacular, the kind that makes people gasp and take 100 photos they'll never look at again. She barely noticed. Could be alone, but didn't want to be. Was that where she was? Day 4 and 5 blurred together. She explored, bought things she didn't need, ate at restaurants that were fine but not memorable, went to bed early and lay awake thinking about Bologna, about the Mercato and the way everyone had known Aurelio, about the Vespa ride when she'd held on to him and felt completely safe despite going way too fast, about making pasta in his kitchen, about the night they'd spent together, about the morning after when he'd made her coffee and they'd sat on his balcony in comfortable silence, about the way he'd told her the truth, even though it might make her leave, about how he'd let her go without making her feel guilty, about how he'd said he'd wait but hadn't pressured her to come back. That wasn't control. That was respect. Why was she still so scared? Day 6, she finally admitted it to herself while sitting at a cafe watching the sun set over the caldera for the 7th time. She was scared because this felt real. Because Aurelio wasn't Marcus. Because what she felt for him in 5 days was more intense than what she'd felt for Marcus in 2 years. Because it would hurt so much more if this didn't work out. But here was the thing. It might not work out. She might go back to Bologna and discover the magic was gone. Or that she couldn't handle his complicated life. Or that 6 months from now, they'd realize they wanted different things. But it also might work. And wasn't the possibility of it working worth the risk of it not? She pulled out her journal, the one she'd been keeping since Paris. Paged through entries. France. Ate 3 croissants this morning and felt free for the first time in 5 years. Stood in a lavender field and remembered how to breathe. Had lunch with Marie. She told me she left her husband at 45 and never regretted it. I'm 30. I'm ahead of schedule. Dinner with Tom. He said I'm learning to take up space without apologizing. I think he's right. Then Bologna entries. Met someone at a restaurant today. I think my trip just got complicated. Vespa ride through hills. I screamed with joy. Can't remember the last time I felt this alive. He told me he's a criminal. I should be scared. I'm not. Is that stupid, or is that finally trusting my own judgment? Left for Greece. Crying in the taxi. Why does doing the right thing feel so wrong? 2 different kinds of happiness in those pages. Both real, both valid. But one was running from something. One was running toward something. She knew which one she wanted. Her phone rang. Sophie's face filled the screen. Lena, how's Greece? Beautiful. Lonely. The conversation flowed easily. Sophie updating her on Amsterdam adventures. Lena admitting she'd met someone and left him and was now questioning everything. Do you remember what you told me in Paris? Sophie asked. That first night we got wine drunk? Not really. I was very drunk. You said you'd spent 10 years being what other people needed, and you were done. You wanted to figure out what you needed. Yeah, I remember that part. So what do you need, Lena? Not what you think you should need. Not what sounds impressive or independent or brave. What do you actually, genuinely need? Lena watched a couple at the next table. They were arguing in Greek, hands flying, voices raised. Then suddenly the man laughed. The woman laughed. And they kissed across the table like they'd never been fighting at all. Mess and love and realness all tangled together. I think, Lena said slowly, I think I need him. And that terrifies me because I spent so long thinking I needed to be alone. Why does needing someone terrify you? Because last time I needed someone, I disappeared. I became smaller and quieter and less until I didn't recognize myself anymore. Was that about needing someone? Or was that about choosing someone who wanted you small? The question hit like a physical blow. Marcus had wanted her small, had loved her most when she was accommodating, when she didn't challenge him, when she made his life easier rather than asking him to grow alongside her. Aurelio had seen her at her fullest, independent, figuring things out, messy and uncertain, and wanted exactly that version. The difference wasn't in needing someone. The difference was in who you chose to need. "Oh," Lena said softly. "Yeah?" "Yeah, I think I just figured something out." After they hung up, Lena sat for a long time with her wine and her journal and her thoughts. She'd needed to be alone to remember who she was, to prove to herself that she could be happy without someone else defining her happiness. That was important. Revolutionary, even. But maybe the next step wasn't staying alone forever. Maybe it was choosing to let someone in, not because she needed them to complete her, but because she wanted them as part of her full, complete self. She'd learned she could be happy alone. That was the foundation. Now she got to choose what she built on that foundation. And she chose Aurelio. Day 7 dawned clear and perfect. Lena woke with clarity she hadn't felt since leaving Bologna. She knew what she wanted. Him. She wanted Aurelio, and whatever messy, complicated life came with him. She wanted to figure out how to be independent and in love. She wanted to stop running. She spent the morning making arrangements, looked up flights back to Bologna, found one leaving tomorrow evening, booked it before she could second-guess herself. Then she showered, put on the white dress she'd bought in Lyon, the one that made her feel confident and beautiful and completely herself, and went down to breakfast with something like joy bubbling in her chest. The hotel owner, a woman named Elena who'd been kind all week, noticed immediately. "You look different today," Elena observed, pouring her coffee. "I made a decision. A good one, I think. You've been sad. I could see it." Was it that obvious? To someone who's been watching tourists for 30 years? Yes, you had that look. The one that says you left something important behind. "I'm going back for it," Elena smiled. "Good. Life's too short to leave important things behind." Lena spent the afternoon wandering Oya one last time. Took photos she'd actually want to look at later. Bought a small blue evil eye pendant from a street vendor because it felt right. Sat on the edge of the caldera with her feet dangling over nothing and felt light. She texted Sophie. "I'm going back." Sophie replied instantly. "Thank God. I was going to fly to Greece and shake sense into you." "When?" "Tomorrow. I bought a ticket." "What are you going to say to him?" That was the question, wasn't it? What do you say to someone you left because you were scared, but who you now realize you want more than safety? She thought about it while watching fishing boats bob in the caldera far below, while eating gelato at a shop with the best view on the island, while walking back to her hotel as afternoon faded toward evening. Maybe the truth. Just the complete, messy truth. I was scared. I'm still scared. But I want to try. I don't have it all figured out, but I have enough figured out to know that I don't want to lose this. To lose you. I'm choosing you. And I'm choosing me. And I think, I hope, those two things can exist together. She practiced saying it out loud, sitting on her balcony drinking wine. "Hi, Aurelio. Surprise. I know I said I needed time, but it turns out I needed less time than I thought. I missed you. I want to try. Can we try?" Too casual. "I'm sorry I left. I'm sorry I was scared, but I'm here now, and I'm ready." Too apologetic. "I figured it out. The thing I was trying to figure out. It's you. You're what I want." Too simple. Maybe she'd know what to say when she saw him. Maybe the words would come when she looked into those green eyes and remembered why she'd taken the risk of falling in the first place. Evening came. Lena showered again, put on her favorite jeans and a soft blue sweater, let her hair dry naturally in waves, applied minimal makeup because she wanted to look like herself, not like she was trying too hard. She was meeting a few people from her hotel for drinks, an informal goodbye since she was leaving tomorrow. They'd all been kind during her week here, and she wanted to say thanks. The cafe they chose was the one she'd been coming to all week. Small, family-owned, with the best view of the caldera and the best wine selection on this part of the island. She arrived first, claimed a table outside even though the evening was turning cool, and ordered wine. The sunset was beginning. Gold light turning to pink, turning to purple. The white buildings glowing. Bells from a nearby church marking the hour. It was beautiful. She'd remember this moment, she thought. This specific sunset in this specific place, when she'd made peace with her choice and decided to be brave. Other guests from the hotel arrived, Maria and John from Canada. The German couple whose names she kept forgetting. They ordered drinks, talked about their trips, made plans to exchange contact information. Lena listened, participated, but part of her mind was already in Bologna, already imagining walking into the osteria, already seeing Aurelio's face when he realized she'd come back. The sun sank lower. The sky turned impossible shades of pink and orange. The conversations around her faded to pleasant background noise. And then she felt it. That awareness. That shift in the air that she'd felt in Bologna when she'd looked up from her ragu and seen him for the first time. The feeling that told her, without seeing, that something important was about to happen. She turned slowly, heart already accelerating, some part of her knowing before her conscious mind caught up. Aurelio stood 10 feet away. He looked exactly as she remembered and somehow even better. Dark jeans that fit perfectly. White button-down with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. Dark blonde hair slightly messy, like he'd been running his hands through it. Tanned skin catching the last of the sunlight. And those eyes. Those impossible green eyes that had haunted her dreams for a week. He had his hands in his pockets, looked nervous, looked hopeful. Looked like he'd flown across the Aegean Sea on the off chance that she might want him as much as he wanted her. Lena. Just her name, said like a question and a statement and a prayer all at once. She stood up slowly. Her legs felt shaky. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat, in her fingertips, in every cell of her body. He'd come. He'd actually come to Greece. The people at her table had gone quiet, sensing something momentous was happening, but not understanding what. She was vaguely aware of Maria whispering to John, of the German couple exchanging glances. She couldn't look away from Aurelio. All the words she'd practiced vanished. All the careful explanations and measured statements disappeared like smoke. She didn't know if she wanted to run to him or run away from the intensity of what she was feeling. Didn't know if she should laugh or cry or do both at once. Didn't know anything except that he was here and she was here, and 7 days suddenly felt like 7 years. Her feet wanted to move. Her brain was screaming conflicting instructions. Go to him. Stay still. Say something. Don't say anything. Be cool. Who cares about cool? Maybe she was ready to stop running from things. Maybe she was ready to start running toward something instead. Maybe courage looked like standing still and letting something terrifying and wonderful happen. Maybe love meant being just as scared of losing someone as you were of losing yourself. She opened her mouth to speak, to say something, anything. But the words wouldn't come. So she just stood there, looking at the man who'd flown to Greece for her, and felt everything shift into place. Maybe she didn't need the perfect words. Maybe she just needed to choose, and she chose him. Subscribe for more Mafia romance stories. If it were you, would you go back to Bologna or keep traveling to more countries before deciding? Tell me in the comments.